Hello and welcome to the Not My Job Pod. I am your host, Emily Gant, and today we are joined by the lovely Blair.Thurston, who is a licensed professional counselor. And we have been friends for a long, long time. And I always delightfully, in like the most positive way possible, call you my like woo-woo friend in the sense that you always kind of push the boundaries of kind of how I think about things, and I love it. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So as we get started, can you, I guess, just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do? Because the idea is you don't work in tech, but what is it that you get up to on the day to day?
Yeah. So I'm a licensed professional counselor based out of Denver, Colorado. I run a private practice virtually from my home, and I primarily see women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who are interested in working with anxiety, self-esteem, relationship issues. I also tend to be a good match for women who are more like spiritual seekers and are curious about systems like human design, the Enneagram. I'm not an astrologer, but I'm interested in that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I would say that's primarily what I do. I also have a lot of experience working in the realm of family systems and addiction, which is a totally kind of like different direction. But for anyone who has a loved one who is struggling with addiction or alcoholism, I work with family members on supporting them.
Amazing. I didn't actually know that you kind of specialized within just women, and kind of within our age range too. Was that a conscious choice that you made, or did you find that those clients just kind of found you?
Gosh, so being a a business owner and marketing and all of that, it is hard like niching down and finding your like ideal population. I don't exclusively work with women. I also have several men in my caseload. I have men in my 60s on my caseload, and they're some of my favorite clients. However, I would say the vast majority of my clients are women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I tend to yeah, I don't know. I tend to connect more with people who are in a similar demographic to me.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you think
hmm
that in general, like if someone's looking for a new therapist, that they should find someone who's quite similar to them, or is finding someone different also a good idea, or it depends?
It doesn't have to be I wouldn't say you have to find someone similar to you. I would say there needs to be resonance because there have been a lot of studies that there's no one best therapeutic approach or therapeutic modality. And the thing that is most healing is the relationship. And so that's definitely what I would focus on is finding someone that you feel a connection to in a relationship with.
I guess then it must be hard, like when you have a client who is your client, but then also you are kind of playing the role as like the professional in that relationship. So like how do you navigate when you come into a situation where you just kind of like your client and you kind of could see yourself even being friends with them?
You don't want to get into a situation where you're friends because then it can become too casual and that's not great. However, yeah, having a connection is really important. And one thing I'll add to that too is I love working with clients who would be my friends outside of the therapy room, but I don't in those cases, I might be cautious about how much I self-disclose and not make it about me and not over disclose about myself so that there is still that like therapist client relationship. Yeah.
And do you feel that, yeah, in general, I guess I kind of wonder, just as someone, who's been to therapy in the past, it's like, am I my therapist's favorite? Do you have a favorite?
I do have favorites. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I do have favorites. The clients who are my favorites are the ones who are very engaged in the process, are the ones who are easier for me to have a connection with, are the ones that take our work together very seriously. Also, the ones that have good interpersonal skills. I mean, it's more enjoyable for me to work with people who have better social skills. It just kind of is. It's more challenging for me to feel a connection with clients if they're not fully present, if they're not fully in their bodies, if they're dissociated, if they're scattered, if they go off on a bunch of tangents. It's much harder for me to feel like I'm in a relationship with someone because at the end of the day, this is a relationship and relationships are like mutually beneficial. And I enjoy clients that are, yeah, like that are present, that are engaged, that, yeah, have good people skills, that are easy for me to form a connection with.
Totally. I mean, I guess that makes sense too. But I think it's interesting that you called out like people with good social skills because I think maybe some people who haven't been to therapy are often like, oh, yeah, I need to go to therapy to get fixed. And so you're already talking about clients who like have excellent social skills and are aware and are in their bodies. So what does therapy look like for someone like that? Do they even need to be there? Why are they there? I guess is my kind of question.
For someone who's more highly functioning, you'd say?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that is probably the majority of my caseload is people who, for the most part, are functioning pretty well in their lives, but they struggle with things like self-esteem and self-image or the relationship with themselves. I think that's really a zone of genius for me is helping people work on the relationship with them that they have with themselves and create inner harmony in their own inner world and own experience. And so I have a lot of like high achievers who perhaps just need a little support in knowing how to slow down, knowing how to rest, knowing how to be more gentle with themselves, improving their relationship with themselves, which has a direct correlation to their relationship with other people.
I love that you just said teaching high achievers to learn how to rest. That's something that I am personally working on right now. Can you elaborate a little bit more on like the importance of rest and why we need it?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we're not machines. Like humans are not machines. And especially another kind of point of passion of mine is working with women and the cyclical nature of being women. Like every week is not the same for us in terms of energy levels and all of that and productivity. And why is rest important? Well, because there will come a point where your body is going to shut down or and your body collapses. And one of my highest values is vitality, is energy, is life force. And so I think about my work being in service to that, like in service to helping people cultivate a sense of vitality and life force. And if we don't rest, then our bodies are going to force us to stop. Our bodies will force it. So I think like kind of another side reflection is so many of us make life harder than it needs to be. Like life is hard enough already. And it's like we have these voices inside our head that are like punishers that are like telling us to push and push and push. And it really doesn't have to be that way. There's a way to become very successful while also being gentle with yourself.
Yeah, I think that balance sounds just really nice. Like the combination and the idea that, yeah, you can be successful, whatever that means for you, while also like having that balance. And yeah, I think that that's something that our generation struggles with in particular. Yeah, especially with the rise of social media, of course. And then it's not like you're just comparing yourself to your neighbor, you're comparing yourself to like the entire world. And then that can just, because we can't be everywhere all the time at once. Yeah. So I guess before I turn this call into my own personal therapy session, I am going to back up. And I do want to ask you, though, a little bit more about kind of how you got into this. So it's always fun. You know, we've been friends since middle school. And so it's always fun to see like people who were my friends when we were like sassy teenagers. And then like they grow up and they're like doing real, like great work and like cool things. And like they're proper professionals with their own business. So kind of how did you get into this and when did you know that this is what you wanted to do?
In a sense, I think I was really lucky in that I knew from a young age that I wanted to be a therapist. I really knew when I was like 15, 16, and it hasn't been until like my adult years and having a lot more self-awareness that I understand that that came from my own family constellation and like my own role as being the peacemaker and the mediator in the family and being rewarded for that and getting a lot of positive feedback for my like emotional stability and maturity and all of those things, I think really positively reinforced this path for me. In later years, I realized that that has not been without impact and consequence to me that I've like had to work through. Anyways, I have always been really motivated by connection, by interpersonal connection, by relationships, by intimacy, by understanding people. I think also because I really wanted to be understood and didn't have the like tools or people who could really see me in the way that I desired, kind of like got swept up in this path. And anyways, I think I have a natural aptitude for therapy and I'm very driven by like personal growth and development by knowing myself really deeply. I'm very interested in like healing. I'm interested in healing because the more healing that we do, the more life force that we have, the more like the better our quality of life is. One more thing I'll add. I also came from a family system where there was addiction growing up. Addiction with my brother was a very big part of my childhood and upbringing. And that really, I think, shaped the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways, being the sibling to an addict who was had a very severe addiction from a very young age. That was a big part of my journey too.
Definitely. I think, yeah, a lot of us kind of look back at, yeah, the way that our parents raised us and then kind of the familial dynamics that we all had. And then it's like, how did it push us to kind of where we are now? And I do find that just really interesting. But at the same time, I've learned like, your parents, I kind of like do the mental math and I'm like, oh, our parents were actually our age at the time that they were doing this, and I don't know what I'm doing. There's no way that they didn't have like a manual for what they were doing either. So it's not like bad, it's not good. It's like a dynamic that everyone has that's super, super interesting to see unfold.
I feel like that is something I could talk about for a long time. Like parent-child relationship healing, because that has also been a very big part of my journey with my mom specifically. Shout out mom, hi. But I feel like one of the greatest gifts that a parent can give their child, adult child, is the ability for the child to come forth and say, hey, like these were the ways that I was hurt by you. It's not about blaming, it's just about being seen and being understood. And for most parents, if a kid were to come to them and say like, hey, this need wasn't met of mine, they are likely going to get defensive, going to shame spiral, going to be, but I loved you and I was a great parent. And then there's no connection. Then they're not actually hearing the kid. If the person can be like, hey, these are the ways that I was impacted growing up, and I'm sharing with you because I want to have a relationship with you and I'm not mad, but this is very real for me. And if the parent can just hold that and say like, wow, like, I'm so sorry, like that must have been so hard for you, I didn't realize, like, if they can hold it without making it about them, then there's just so much healing that can happen.
Yeah, I see this theme too with a lot of my friends and the kind of the way that, we all interact as adults now with our parents, like growing up in kind of more of most of our generation has been to some version of therapy or at least read some sort of book on the topic. And so it's always this weird dynamic where, yeah, you're trying to like you're not saying, you did this wrong. It's almost just like, hey, I felt this way about this as a kid. And then it kind of overwrites the reality that I guess your parents kind of have in their own head about something specific. And it doesn't mean that they were bad parents. Like they could have been the best parents in the world. And like in many cases, they were great parents. But you're like, no, this was still a thing that happened. And this is how I saw it. And yeah, I think, yeah, getting defensive is also probably quite natural for anyone to hear that when somebody else sees a situation completely differently from you.
To use a therapy term, it requires a lot of ego strength to be able to hold that. So if someone has a very fragile ego, if someone has a very fragile sense of self, they're going to be super threatened by any sort of feedback that might be perceived as being critical. However, if they have a very strong sense of self and they are secure within themselves and confident, then they're so much more likely to be able to hold feedback like that. It's not going to shatter their self-image. They're not fragile. And it's just so much easier to have healthy relationships with people who know how to hold themselves.
Definitely. And I think that's so interesting too, because it happens that, even with like friend dynamics, like somebody will say like, hey, what you said kind of hurt my feelings because this. And I may completely, like, even upon reflection, completely disagree, but I can't disagree with the reality of how it made them feel. So it's kind of like multiple realities can exist in one. And I do think that is something that's fascinating.
Amazing. Yeah, you nailed it.
Okay, perfect. I feel like I just got a gold star.
You got a gold star. Appealing to the high achiever in you.
Yeah, okay. Well diagnosed. But I find it what's super interesting though about you as a therapist is the way that you integrate sort of spirituality into your practice, and also maybe, I don't know if you would call them unconventional. In my head, they're kind of unconventional. Like you and I have actually done a human design reading, which was super interesting. There's so many like different things out there. There's like human design, there's the Enneagram, there's chakras, there's like all these like different like tools and names for like alternative spiritual practice. And so what are some of the ways that like spirituality works into work?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because it's such a passion of mine. I view people in terms of the soul. I believe that there is a like an eternal part to each of us, that our souls come here to learn specific lessons in this lifetime. And this whole lifetime, I also believe in multiple lives, but this whole lifetime is in service to our own like spiritual growth and development, which ultimately is just moving us closer in the direction of love. And so, bringing in a spiritual lens, it can really help to contextualize a specific struggle that someone is going through. It can help to kind of like zoom out and provide a wider scope for understanding someone, especially if they're stuck in a very like acute moment of pain or suffering. A big part of how I like view myself is to be, this is a term from my mom too, is to be a hope merchant, is to like hold the vision for people when they can't see it for themselves, hold this sense of like hope and possibility for people when they can't see it for themselves. I think that I just don't think that we can talk about healing without also addressing the nature of the soul and the nature of the spirit. And what's cool is that this understanding is being woven more into mainstream psychology, mainstream healing, specifically like I'm about to take an IFS training, internal family systems, and in that modality there is an understanding that every single person has this capital S self, which is the part of you that is eternal, this part of you that can never be harmed, that is always safe, and that when you're rested into that place embodies these natural qualities of compassion, curiosity, activity, love, gentleness. That is the eternal nature of who you are. However, we all have wounding. We all have these parts that get activated. We have our they'd be referred to as exiles, but parts of us that we've deemed not okay. When we're acting out of the wound, our life isn't in balance. And so a lot of what I do is help people bring harmony to their inner system so that they can lead from that core self energy. Human design has been a very big part of my journey as well. It's just another way to conceptualize a person. I think of these things as tools, not dogma, not religion, nothing like that, but they're tools, and they help me. They help me personally, and they help my clients. And so human design, for those who are unfamiliar, is it's a channeled system that integrates elements of astrology, the chakra system, the Chinese I Ching, the Kabbalah, and quantum physics. And based on your birth chart, it gives you a blueprint of who you came here to be. And I'm very interested in that. I'm very interested in like that core question of who am I? Who did I come here to be? What is my purpose? And why I love human design so much is because it points to that. It points to who you came here to be. And then it shows you the ways that you are susceptible to external conditioning and where you perhaps conform to the not self. And the reason I care about this is because when we're in the not self, we suffer. When we are moving through life, like trying to be someone that we were never intended to be, we suffer. It causes so much needless pain. And so I'm really passionate about liberating suffering. And a big part of that is just giving people permission to be who they are.
Yeah, I think the tools are super interesting to me as someone who's not, I guess, I jokingly call it woo woo. I hope, is that an offensive term
No,
for you?
that's totally okay. I've been called woo my whole life.
I love it.
But I
Yeah.
like to think, Emily, that I walk with like a foot in both worlds. Like I can do the mainstream thing. I can be relatable.
No, but that's literally what I was about to say is like, because yeah, I mean, we've done a human design reading on my chart together. I mean, I'm not hating on the woo woo, but as someone who is very much not woo woo, I do find it funny because it's like, even if, for example, you pull my chart, you find all this information about me through human design. Let's say you talk to me about it and I completely disagree. That's still a tool for then me to be like, no, that doesn't describe me. This other thing does. And then that's kind of a method for self-discovery in the way that maybe reading my horoscope on Tuesday, I'm like, well, that didn't happen today, but this is how I feel about this. And then it just kind of opens up a dialogue with yourself. So I feel like anyone who's woo woo or not can still benefit from those kinds of activities.
Something I want to build on with what you just said that is very important to me is helping people cultivate the skill of discernment, because everything that I say isn't going to land for you. And that, like, there's nobody that has access to the full picture of truth. I believe, we all have little slivers of truth. We all have little pieces of the pie, but none of us has access to the full picture of truth. And so I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. I'm here actually to help people like sharpen and hone their own skill of discernment so that they can decide like what is helpful for them and what feels correct for them. And I will add that I think part of the discernment piece involves being able to feel your body, and not just be totally stuck in the head. The head is helpful and useful, but we feel things through our bodies.
Definitely. It's like, and I think that's a skill that, yeah, I'm not there, but it's always getting better every day. But it's one of those things. It's like if somebody says something that like irritates me and then like my whole body just like freezes up and like I just feel angry. I'm like, okay, wait a second. I can go and address this physical feeling first, then I can think through how I'm going to respond. And so if anything, I think the skill of just being like, I'm going to be right back. I'm going to respond to this later, is something that, I'm not perfect at now, but I have gotten better at it. And I think that's kind of the defining factor between my personality in my 30s versus my personality in my 20s. Because in my 20s, I would like just get angry or like I would get sad and then it would just come out. And I like to think I don't do that as much anymore, a little bit more level.
That's so awesome, Emily. Like, I think what you're speaking to is like the difference between reacting versus responding. And when we haven't done any like personal work on ourselves, it's really common to just like lash out and react and just like lash out and react and get angry and not even really think, but you're acting on autopilot, usually based off of a previous wound that you may or may not even be aware that you have. Whereas if we can learn how to pause, which means learning how to tolerate uncomfortable sensation in the body, we can learn how to pause and slow down. And like you said, kind of like step away and give yourself some time and then come back and then respond with intention. That's how we can move forward in cultivating relationships that are healthy. And also that's how we shift a pattern. That's how, if we want to change something in our lives, a behavioral pattern, we have to have that, cultivate that ability to slow down, pause, and then respond with intention.
I guess my question though is I guess if somebody's struggling with the discernment of, I don't know, for example, you're in a really toxic job or something like this, just an example. It's like you're in a really toxic job and, it's activating your physical feelings and like you're getting sick regularly and you are like practicing all the things of like, okay, I'm going to pause, then I'll respond and that kind of stuff. Like, I guess I'm using the example of a job, but it could be a job, it could be a friend or a relationship. How do you know when it's time to just be like, all right, quit? Because also sometimes I feel like annoyance is the price you pay for community. Like if your friends show up late or don't pay you back on time, like you have to kind of deal with that if you want friends. So it's like, how do you balance, like, where do you put up the boundary?
That's a good question. Well, I would first say that there's no right or wrong here. Like, truly, there's no right or wrong. There are just different choices with different outcomes. Sometimes like, what I'll do is if someone is in a choice point like that of, say you're in a job, it's like, when do I stay and when do I go? Sometimes we might be really uncomfortable in the job and it might be really toxic, but it's not time to leave yet. And sometimes it is. Anyways, it's not clear. It's not cut and dry. But something that I'll do with people is I'll slow them down and then I'll ask, okay, like what would the highest, wisest version of you do in this situation right now? Because most people are able to access that. If you were to really like check in with yourself, what is the like wisest, smartest, most actualized version of you? How would they choose to proceed in this? And then we kind of go from there.
I think that's a really nice way to look at it because, yeah, you're kind of thinking like the version of me that I'm working towards anyway, what would she do in this situation?
I literally think about this as like those, like, what would Jesus do bracelets, WWJD, but it's like, what would you do? Like, what would the highest version of you do? Because
Yeah,
like people know, they're just afraid to admit it. Or but people know.
a friend of mine always plays that game where she'll flip a coin and then she's like, "Well, where do you want it to where do you want it to land?" But like she says it so casually that you don't even know she's tricking you. Then I'll be like, "Well, actually, I was kind of hoping it was heads. What is it?" And she's like, "Heads." She doesn't tell you what it actually landed on.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. There is like, what do you secretly, how do you secretly hope this plays out and take that
Mhm.
path?
Okay, so there's no wrong decisions, is what I'm hearing. I think that actually
Yes.
sounds nice.
There's like, I really want to emphasize that there's no wrong decisions here. They're just different choices with different outcomes. And either path is going to be okay. And either path is going to have its own like benefits and challenges. And there's like really no way to mess it up.
Yeah, that's really reassuring. But
Good.
I guess also I wonder though, because like I don't know, there's like this concept of like there is no good and there is no bad. And I've been listening a lot recently to there's a recent podcast on like Diary of a CEO on like the idea of like multiple realities and how everything's interconnected. And it was like this, I think he was a physicist. He's like explaining it like everyone's wearing a different headset. So you're all the same like one consciousness, but basically everyone's on like their own headset where they're looking out into the world. And so then I don't know, I like that theory as, and it kind of makes the most sense to me as someone who works in tech and AI. And as simulations get more and more complicated, I'm like, oh, okay, this actually, we could simulate an entire world. So we might be a simulation. And so like the idea of kind of the woo woo side of that, where it's like, you can leap to a different reality by like choosing different things. I don't know, like how do you feel about that being just like, is life a game or what are we working with here? Like, do you have any
Oh,
ideas on
that's
that?
I love that question. Okay, so immediately where my mind went when you were talking about like we're all just here like as these individuals with our own unique headsets on. In like if we were to take a spiritual perspective on this, like what's the purpose of life? The purpose of life is to experience. And so there are like schools of thought that would say like, okay, God decided that God wanted to experience himself, herself in this way, in this way, in this way, in this way. It's like every person is a different facet of God, or if you don't want to use that word, of consciousness, of energy, whatever. But every person is a different facet having its own very unique experience for the simple purpose of experiencing and growth. And if I were to get like really woo woo, I don't know this, but they say that up there, like in the fifth dimension, it gets kind of boring. Like it gets kind of boring up there if it's all just like love and light and like there's no excitement and there's drama and souls choose to incarnate into this plane to have an experience, to get to experience like love and heartbreak and jealousy and anger and peace and to get to experience contrast because otherwise like it seems like it would be kind of boring.
I
And
think
all
that's
of
like
this is service to our evolution.
I think that's so interesting because yeah, I really struggle with this because on one hand, I think that makes total sense. Everyone's kind of here to learn their own set of lessons. But then on the other hand, I struggle with that because like there's so much, like obviously our inconveniences. And again, you can't really compare people's inconveniences or traumas or troubles because everyone's born in different capacities and everyone has different, like you can just, it's apples to oranges. Just because I dropped, my orange juice and spilled a glass, it doesn't mean that was like, it doesn't negate, I don't know, I'm about to compare like orange juice to like a starving child somewhere in a war zone, like, so like you can't compare those things, but it doesn't make the one suffering any less. So how do we separate like, I don't, that's not even a question. Yeah.
Any comments? I think that it's not helpful to compare suffering. It's not helpful to compare suffering. What is helpful is to acknowledge suffering when it's present and to be with it, to really, to your point on like starving children and wars and like the war in Gaza right now. I mean, I'm like definitely not going to say that was their sole choice. I feel like that is wrong. And I feel like that is very, like, we could say, like, spiritual bypassy. I do believe in evil. I do believe in like good and bad. And I do think that there's evil in the world. I tend to believe in like polarity, and I believe that the extent of light and good in the world is equal and opposite of the extent of dark and evil. And the brighter the light gets, perhaps, maybe the more intense the suffering and the evil is. So much of this is just one like giant mystery as to what are we doing here? What's the purpose of it all? But what I do know is that it is really important to acknowledge the very real suffering and pain that people experience.
Yeah, I think yeah, I don't mean to put that one on you either because, yeah, that's an impossible question to
An impossible
answer.
question.
It is for anyone. I mean, yeah, because on one hand, it's like, you can talk about spirituality and like things at a high level. Then, it's easy to say, like, you have to come to terms with the darkness, and then there is evil, there is light, there is good. And then some people just suffer, and it's like, oh, I don't, yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, if I had an answer, then maybe I'd have a Nobel Prize. But yeah, I definitely struggle to come to terms with that in terms of like just the world.
Yeah, that's hard.
But I guess then when you are dealing with clients and they're going through something that's like, whether it's particularly traumatic or it's traumatic for them, how do you, I guess, remove yourself from sort of feeling that on their behalf? Because I do see you as quite an empathetic person. So how do you kind of put up, is it a wall or is it like, what do you do?
I definitely like I don't remove myself from feeling it on their behalf. I feel it with them. I think that's the medicine actually for people, is to not rescue people from their discomfort, but to kind of climb in and feel it with them and hold it with them, because we are adequately equipped to deal with pain. Pain is just an inevitable part of life. It can become suffering if we have to hold it alone. So much of like therapy, I think, is being with people in their pain and feeling it with them, really allowing their suffering to open me too, but not trying to make it all better. Like, not trying to make it all better, not trying to like take it away from them, but be with them in it. And what will inevitably happen is it'll shift. Like a painful emotion, once it is given enough space to breathe and be acknowledged and be talked about and be felt, it'll move. It won't stay at that level of intensity for forever.
Mhm.
I will say, like, it is pretty easy for me to detach after, for me to disconnect from my work. Human design kind of helps me conceptualize this in the sense that there's a like, for people who have an open solar plexus, they are more like empathic and they absorb and amplify the emotions of the people around them. I don't have that. I'm very kind and compassionate, but I don't have, say, like unchecked empathy. There are a lot of therapists who have, I think, unchecked empathy where it's too much. Yeah. Anyways, it's almost like I'm just naturally boundaried by whatever my constitution is. I'm just kind of naturally boundaried. So it's relatively easy for me to like climb in there and feel the thing with the person and then climb out and then kind of go about my life.
Okay, interesting. So it's kind of almost I guess, a natural skill that you had that kind of makes you good at this job.
I think so. Because I don't have a savior complex. I don't have a martyr complex. I don't have a need to be a need to be needed, and I don't have that, and that makes it a bit easier.
But also probably removes some pressure from your clients because, you're not trying to fix them. You're like, I'm just here. I'm here for you as you need me.
Exactly, because that puts a lot of pressure on people when they feel like they need to be fixed, or they feel like they need to be different, or they feel like they need to get better to make me happy.
Definitely. You have mentioned a couple times as we've been talking about sort of the need for just having another person or having community. So what does that look like in terms of building, like, what is community and what is its role in healing or just happiness and joy?
Oh, yeah, that's such a good question. So, I guess the first place where my mind went when you said need for other people is for co regulation of our nervous systems. If some person is very activated, maybe they're like, yeah, they're very activated, very in fight or flight, very much in like sympathetic arousal. It is so helpful to have another person there who is calm, who is stable, and that person can regulate the other person to bring them down to a matching level of stability, so we can like help each other out in that way. And also like touch is a basic human need. Yeah, to be like, to be touched, to be hugged, to be held, these are basic human needs that are fundamental for our health. And when people live too much in isolation and they get disconnected from human touch, it has an impact on mental health. I guess other aspects of the importance of community are a sense of belonging. Like, humans are tribal beings. We, in order to be well, we need to feel like we belong somewhere. And I think I think there's a big crisis of belonging happening right now in the world, just as people become more disconnected with technology and just social media, whatever. I think there's a crisis of belonging, of people are like wondering, like, where's my tribe? Where are my people? It's like everyone is just isolated in their own little apartments by themselves, and there's not much natural overlap. And it impacts our ability to feel like, yeah, connected to the world, and then like we matter. And yeah, I mean, community is massively important for mental health. And then also just on the practical standpoint of like, if there's, I don't know, if there's ever like an emergency or you need help, like, we're meant to lean on each other. We're not meant to do this human life thing all by ourselves. And it just seems like there are increasingly more and more and more barriers to connection. I mean, it's possible. It just requires more and more effort to put ourselves out there and plug ourselves into communities.
I think that's a really interesting take. And especially nowadays with like the rise of social media, it's like you kind of find yourself in an echo chamber where it's like you feel like you found this like online community of people who kind of think like you do, but in reality, it's like those aren't really your friends. Those aren't the people who you're calling up when you're sad and you need a hug, or like those aren't the people you're calling up when you're like, you need someone to watch your cat, or like you need a favor, or you just want to go do something, an activity together. Yeah, I mean, I know I have to make a conscious effort because I work remotely, so sometimes I'll be like in my room for the whole day, and then yeah, I'm like, oh wait, I should probably like go outside and talk to someone, or like meet a friend for coffee. Or I guess I'm curious, are there ways that you've seen or like themes within your clients of like kind of how modern technology has kept us from forming communities?
Well, I think that it requires effort. It requires effort and vulnerability and facing the possibility of rejection to put yourself out there in real life, or if you're plugging into a new community. Something that really gets in the way of people giving themselves that thing that they need is the fear of rejection, a sense of inadequacy, a sense of, what if they don't like me, or what if I don't fit in, or what if I'm not good enough? And that very fear is enough to keep a lot of people at home. And social media is a lot safer. It requires virtually no effort. You can just like sit on your bed and scroll and kind of feel a semblance of connection. To say, there are a lot of positive things that come from social media too. Like, it's just like anything, it's how you use it. But there is the potential for a lot of benefit, but that can't be your only friends. Or not that it can't be, but it wouldn't be ideal for mental health for that to be your only friends and only community. But it's vulnerable putting yourself out there. And so for a lot of my clients, we might spend weeks like working on getting to a place of building up the courage to go to a dance class, or go to a pottery class, or go on a group hike, or go out on a date. And kind of playing the tape out for all the possible scenarios of ways that could go, building up people's sense of agency and confidence. Because if we allow that fear to rule our lives, there's a very real risk of living at home for your entire life without ever like making any friends or like cultivating community or giving yourself the things that are necessary for a meaningful and fulfilling life. And so we must be able to tolerate discomfort, the discomfort of potentially social anxiety. Fear of rejection is a really big one. And when the fear of rejection piece comes up, it's working on the like not internalizing that and highlighting like this means nothing about you. Like if that person doesn't want to go on a date with you, for example, like it means nothing about you. It has everything to do with the other person and like where they are internally and whatever their own process. And if we can stop taking things so personally, we experience a lot more freedom. But that's hard. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely the hardest part, right? Is yeah, because you do have to have like a pretty high sense of self to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And I guess kind of cultivating that comes in stages for sure.
Totally.
Yeah, so I find that I don't know, I find that super interesting and how I guess maybe I don't know if it's our generation, but yeah, I feel like maybe our parents' generation they always had, more together activities. I don't know, you don't nobody in our well, nobody that I know in our age group is like going to like church groups or like clubs. Actually, my friend group recently started a book club. But like that was an effort of all of us to be like, we need to spend more time together. So like what are some of the things you would advise somebody who was trying to get out there and like get more connected with their local community or like find community?
Yeah. It's funny that you asked this question to me because I'm not very good at this. And this is a conversation I am constantly having with myself. Yeah. But, anyways, things that I have recommended and that I have done that have been helpful are finding something you're interested in. I live in Colorado, and so there's a lot of like outdoor stuff, hiking, cycling groups, like whatever it may be. So pick an activity, pick a thing that you want to learn, pick a thing that you want to devote some time to and then commit to it and make a commitment that feels sustainable for you. Currently, for me, I'm always trying to figure out how to like stay connected and plug into community because like you, I live alone and I work remote and it's very easy for me to like have a lot of time pass of not seeing people if I don't make an active effort. Currently right now, I'm getting a lot of like community sense from my gym. Yeah, I go to a like an awesome gym, shout out Traverse, and I feel a sense of connection and community there that has really just enhanced my life. It makes me feel like I belong somewhere. In the past, I also like have gotten really involved in different dance communities. I had like an 8-month stint with salsa, and then I had an on and off like 2-year stint with dancing zouk, which is another like Latin Brazilian partner dance. I had a year and a half or 2 years with capoeira, which is this, oh God, my life is so niche, which is this like Afro-Brazilian martial art that I loved. And I last summer I was riding my bike a lot. I kind of went on a couple of group rides that it wasn't really my demographic. It was mostly like 65 plus year old men.
It's
I don't,
so interesting that like you yourself are saying I'm not so good at getting out there into community, but then you like list off like a list of activities that would cause me crippling anxiety. If I had to go to a salsa class, I'd be like ready to throw up all day.
okay. Well, okay, let me amend this. I don't stay or haven't stayed. Like they've all been phases.
It's interesting because you were saying that kind of staying long term is something that isn't what you do. And I guess I resonate with that because for a long time I was moving countries every year. So it was like, oh, I was known as this person who could like find friends really fast. But like in reality, I was like, oh, but I'm moving next year to another country. Yeah, curious about like kind of finding community and then more about how you do it either through activities or maintaining relationships when you're kind of out of a salsa or zouk or whatever it is phase. How does that look for you?
I tend to I bond very much like one on one. I'm not much of a like a group person. And so I tend to I'll make a connection with like one person or two people within like those communities, and then I'll stay connected with that one person or those two people. I'm not very good at showing up to group things, like group gatherings, group events or whatever. I often won't show up. But I will show up if it's like a one-on-one coffee date or going for a walk, or if there's like, yeah, just the one-on-one connection.
But I mean, it's important to know that about yourself and just like how you prefer to connect.
Yeah.
I am curious though if like sort of your background, obviously, you know, you went to school for this as well, so it's like your background and just how humans interact with each other. Like how does that kind of come up in personal relationships or just with friends or, you know, any like even your family? For example, I spoke with my friend Heather who works, she's also a therapist, but she works more on like the public sector side. And she said like jokingly sometimes she'll get into arguments with her boyfriend and then he's like, "Would you tell your clients to respond this way?" And she's like, "This isn't therapist me, this is just me." And so how does I guess how does your background affect like yeah, just relationships with the people you care about?
Yeah. I would say in my friendships, it is definitely just like a benefit because it gives me this capacity to have more interpersonal skills, understand like connection and attunement and the kind of like natural flow of conversation and being able to read people. I would say in romantic relationships, sometimes like I have to be aware of not slipping into therapist role or therapist using like a therapist voice. And also like I don't want that. I do not want to be the therapist in my like romantic relationships at all. Some of this is just like I have a lot of natural skill in holding people, and that's really helpful. Yeah. I guess how does it show up to another way it can show up for me is I'm so used to connecting around like I don't know, like personal growth and development and talking about feelings and like spiritual processing and stuff like that, that sometimes I can get stuck there, and I need to learn how to connect on a like more casual level to not talk about like therapy things or human design or whatever, because sometimes it's just like too much and sometimes it's just too tiring and sometimes I just get tired of myself and I'm like I cannot talk
I
about this
was
for one more second.
I was talking to a friend that reminded me though of like I was talking to a friend recently about like she hates small talk and I was like I think small talk, bring back the small talk. I think it is a valuable skill that everyone should have because if I meet you, I don't know you. So like
Yeah.
I'm not opening myself. I'm not going to be like here's my spirit. Let me talk about my soul. Like no, I
Yeah.
don't know you. So like I need to repeatedly talk about the weather with someone so that I then feel comfortable later slowly revealing myself, but also I think it small talk allows us to see people at like a bigger level. Like if I've had small talk with a colleague 20 times over a year and then they throw out like a belief that I disagree with, then I have this background of being like, well, they seemed like kind of chill the other 20 times. This one's kind of weird. But like if you go right into the deep stuff, then immediately I'm like, no, you disagree with me. Like get away. And like I think small talk is sorry, that's my
No,
passion
okay.
subject.
I love that you said that so much. And what you're speaking to is like it's the discernment piece. It's like a little, to use a like phrase that gets thrown around a lot, like it's a little unhinged to just throw your life trauma on someone right when you meet them. Like that, like there's no social attunement there. Like it's normal to need to little by little by little build up a sense of comfortability with someone via small talk, via like consistently seeing someone over time and how they respond to things. I love that you say that, like bring back small talk. I've been in a stage of like I want to be more mainstream. I've been a little out here for a while and I want to be a little more mainstream right now. So bring back the small talk, bring back the mainstream, bring back the talking about the weather, because it's like there's a lot to be said for just the ease of sharing space with people. And like nobody wants to be connecting on a deep level all the time. It's too much, it's exhausting. And let's just like send memes and talk about funny things and talk about the weather, talk about our hikes. And I'm very much like in agreement with that.
Yeah, I like that. That's yeah, I'm glad you agree.
Yeah.
That's my latest one. And whenever I'm surprised, actually, I get pushback whenever I say it because people are like, no, like I want to connect, you know? And especially in this world of like online dating, for example, like you go out on a date with somebody and like what you're supposed to just like jump into that. Like I have so many friends who like I know I wouldn't date because we're friends and there are like big incompatibilities there that you just find out by being friends.
Totally.
And that means that they're lovely people and their relationships are great for them. But like, I don't want to date them because now I know, like, based on a friendship that we have, that that would never work. And I feel like when we meet people, I guess I'm thinking specifically romantic relationships with like dating apps, it's like you're supposed to just like jump into like the big stuff. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, you can talk about superficial stuff. It's like, how do you conduct yourself in a social situation? But I don't know. That's my hot take of the day.
I think it's like important to cultivate the ability to have deep conversations, but just because you can doesn't mean you should employ that all the time on the first date or second date. Like, I think there's a difference, and maybe some of the like hate that small talk has gotten is it's small talk for people who didn't also have the capacity to talk about like mournful things. And I think the ideal would be cultivate within yourself the relational capacity to talk about like important or deeper, harder conversations, but don't stay there all the time. Like employ small talk.
Yeah.
Have another way of saying this is have range. Like have range in the way that you can relate to people.
I like that a lot. Yeah, okay, you've put to words exactly how I feel about it. Range, I
Good.
think is really, really important. So thank you for that one.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. I guess, yeah, so as we're kind of pulling it all together, is there anything, I guess, just about either therapy or spirituality or just about yourself that, yeah, maybe you wanted to talk about today?
I do want to talk a little bit more about like my actual approach to therapy with people. I wonder if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So so I'm about to take the internal family systems training. I studied for a year with Dr. Gabor Mate in an approach called compassionate inquiry. It's a somatic based approach. And what somatics looks like in my practice is I help people identify what they're feeling in their bodies, hold it, stretch their capacity to be with it, and then move through it. And I think you had asked a question of like, what's the importance of somatics and how does that help with trauma healing? Well, when we experience some sort of trauma, it's not what happens to us, but it's what happens inside of us. It's how our body internalizes the external event. So like the same external event could happen to two people, but one person is going to internalize it as a trauma and the other person might not. And so when we experience trauma, we have energy that gets frozen in our nervous system that doesn't have anywhere to discharge. It doesn't get to complete. It doesn't get to resolve. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the like practical work that I do with people. So I have a somatic based approach. I also have an IFS informed lens, internal family systems. What I You had asked Emily about like why are somatics important and how can connecting with the body like help resolve trauma. And so what happens is that when we experience a traumatic event, it's not what happens outside of us that matters so much as it's how our body internalizes the event. So the same person or two different people could experience the same event and one person might register it in their bodies as a trauma and the other person might not. And if there's trauma in the body, what that means is that there's frozen energy in the nervous system that never was able to complete and resolve and discharge. And so it gets stuck. And when that happens, it shows up as tight muscles and tension and holding patterns in the body and a sense of not feeling safe in the world and chronic sympathetic activation so that you're always kind of like scanning the environment for threats because your body hasn't been able to like come down and discharge and release the energy that got stuck and frozen. And so one of the things that I help people do is access those areas of frozen energy in the body. And we can do a somatic exercise like shaking is really helpful. Sometimes I'll put on music and we'll just like get up and we'll like shake and move like really intensely for 5-10 minutes. And then I'll have them lay on the floor like in total stillness and feel like the difference in their bodies. What else do we do? I will help like people connect with what physical sensation is present and learn how to be with it and learn how to stay with it. And there's a technique called somatic tracking, where if we can bring our awareness to a point of physical physical tension or sensation in the body and stay with it for long enough and just observe it, it will start to shift, it'll start to move. Energy observed changes its form. And so if we can just continue observing it and staying with it, it will move under observation. Let's see what else. Emotions always show up as physical sensations in the body first. And so if someone is not sure what they're feeling, if they can't name an emotion, that's okay. We'll just go to the body and we'll try to find like where is their sensation. For me, I will often feel like pressure in my chest. Some people feel like a tightness in their throat or nausea in their belly or like tension in the upper back. And it's different for everyone, but we learn how to attune to the body. We learn how to attune to what is happening and then process it, resolve it, complete it, be with it.
So would you advise that for like, is that universal? Like, if you're feeling just something's wrong, like, 5 minutes of literally just shaking, like movement, is that something that is universally advised, or is that something that like you would need, I don't know, guidance along of like how to do it effectively? Or maybe that's a dumb question. I'm not
No,
sure.
no, it's not a dumb question at all. Shaking is helpful when there's like a lot of energy in the system that doesn't have anywhere to go. Like if the person is visibly very restless, like they're tapping their legs a lot, or they're like, there's a lot of sympathetic activation, that's when shaking is really helpful to discharge it. It's also helpful if someone is in the middle of like a major depressive episode and there's a lot of heaviness and stagnation in the system. In that case, it's also really helpful to activate like the body and to get some energy moving, because depression is energy that has been depressed, it's stuck, and physical movement is really helpful for that. If it's like, I don't know, if you're feeling nauseous in your belly, that might not necessitate shaking. In that case, I would probably just sometimes I'll bring like a hand to my chest and a hand to my belly, and I'll just breathe and I'll just feel. That is something that people can do like by themselves. um,
So I guess to summarize though, like if I'm ruminating on something, addressing the physical aspect of it first is the way to go, or what are kind of the immediate steps if like,
that's
I'm finding myself like thinking about something too much.
that's a great question. Okay, if you're ruminating on something, that's like a sure sign that you're popped out of your body and you're in your head. And so one of the best ways to interrupt that rumination cycle is to get into your body through physical activity. So this could be like walking, weightlifting, dancing, like punching, being active. Also, if you are stuck in a like rumination cycle, just pausing and asking like, is this true? Is this true? And reality checking yourself. And if it's difficult for you to reality check yourself, bring in a friend or someone you trust and ask them to help reality check you with a thought that it has a hold on you and is fixated and that you kind of can't get out of. Yeah, those would be my recommendations. Reality check yourself, pull someone in to help reality check you and get in your body. That will
Okay.
help quiet the mind.
I'm curious too then how that kind of translates for, I feel like people, when you're depressed, the last thing you want to do is like get up and go for a run. It took me many, many years, but I would say since the pandemic, I've been a 3 workouts a week, no matter what person. But I failed at creating that routine for my whole life. I would go through spurts where I would work out all the time and then I wouldn't. And then, yeah, I was like, all right, 3 times a week, sometimes more, not less, unless I'm, sick or exhausted, but something 3 times a week. So it's like, I guess when you're not in that routine and it's not just something that you do regularly, how do you get people to start? That's not an easy lift, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you explain the benefits?
Yeah. Oh man. So be realistic with your starting point and start small. Be realistic with your starting point. Don't overwhelm yourself. And so if you're really depressed, maybe the goal is you go for one walk that week. And we would work on like sustaining that one walk a week. And then maybe you go to 2 walks a week or 3 walks a week. But it's like you want to find the sweet spot where it's doable. Yeah, where it's doable such that like you can have some sort of forward momentum and the person won't just like fully shut down and say like I'm not like I suck, I'm the worst, I can't do anything. And something else I would also really emphasize is seeing if you can work on like self improvement, not from a place of punishment, but from a place of kindness, not berating yourself, not like telling yourself that you're a piece of shit to try to like bully yourself into doing that behavior. That's probably not going to be sustainable long term, but being realistic about your starting point while holding the vision of where you want to go and being gentle, like being gentle with yourself, but still doing the thing. And it's hard when people are really, really depressed. It's hard to pull them out of that.
Yeah, I think not related to depression at all, but I think something that has been newer for me in the last couple of years since I moved to Berlin specifically. Here, there's like so much techno and house music. And so I would say like the amount of hours I spend per month like actually at like a DJ set where it's like repetitive beats and then like dancing has really I'm not signing up for salsa class, but like you go into a room where especially in Berlin they're not allowed to film you. So like phones are not allowed in the clubs. So there's like no anxiety around like looking stupid while you're dancing because no one can take pictures.
Yeah.
And sort of repetitive sound and movement is something that I've found really helpful. I guess I thought of it when you said finding something that works for you. And yeah, I think that's an unconventional one maybe for people who aren't in Berlin maybe.
That is so awesome, Emily. Like the repetitive house, like house music, house beats, and like what that evokes for me is joy, like joy and play and fun. And I feel like I could do a whole like tangent on how people don't have enough fun, or how can you bring more fun into your life in ways that are maybe not self-destructive, but ways that really like generate joy. And music and dance are like really big components of that.
Yeah. I feel like with wellness, the way that it's structured now, we often get, I don't know, there's this vision of like, make your green smoothie and be by yourself and meditate alone and look inward and fix yourself and be better yourself and like blah, blah, blah. But like, yeah, sometimes it's like you just go into a big group of people and like move around or,
Yeah.
have fun, laugh a little bit. Maybe you had a couple glasses of wine and that's not good for you, but the community that you just spent 3 hours with is really good for you. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but
Like it
I
doesn't
sometimes
have to
struggle
be
with.
so like it can be simple. Like let it be easy. Like what if we didn't get just like so anal about our wellness routine that it took all the joy out of living, and then I feel like we're just missing the point. The point is to experience life and to hopefully enjoy your life. And like that's definitely one of the traps of the wellness space, is getting so hyper focused on doing all the things well that you're not having any fun.
I love that though. And I do think that's what, makes your like the way that you bring yourself to work really interesting because yeah, you are blending, you're a very active person and, so you're blending like physical with like obviously a psychology background and the spiritual as well, like as it's needed for your clients. And I love that. I think it's really fascinating and perfect for you and perfect for the people that find you. So my other question though is if someone was listening to this and they were like, I really like her, how do I get in touch? Is that, I guess I'll drop all your links and stuff, but do you take on new clients or do you kind of only go through word of mouth or how does like kind of the business growth or the marketing aspect of it work for you?
Yeah, I'm accepting new clients right now. I have space in my caseload. People can reach out to me either via my website, via my email address, via Instagram. If anyone wants to follow me on Instagram, I would love that. And yeah, I would love to connect with anyone who is interested in working with me.
Amazing, amazing. The final question that I've been asking everyone the last few episodes at least is what is the weirdest thing you have found yourself Googling or searching on ChatGPT or just searching for
Oh my gosh.
work? What's the weirdest thing that you have looked up related to your job?
Oh man. Weirdest thing.
Or maybe not even necessarily weird. It can be like, uh, yeah, I don't know. Like I get super embarrassed when I sometimes will Google like 4 plus 7 and I'm like, you didn't need to Google that.
Gosh, I don't think I have any weird things. Sometimes I will ask ChatGPT for like a refresher on what are some tangible steps for treating anxious attachment. For example, that was one I looked up recently. Sometimes I will input my clients like human design info into Chat GPT to get a more like specified reading about an aspect on. I don't use Chat GPT for my readings, but sometimes if I want to learn something about a really specific element, I'll use Chat GPT. What else? I use Chat GPT to help me remember things that I already know. Like I might ask a question about like attachment styles and then it'll spit it out in like very clinical language and I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is stuff that I like that is already just so integrated into my understanding of human beings and relating that I didn't even think to like break it down in those steps." So, yeah, that's my answer.
I love that answer. Perfect. Well, thank you so, so much for joining me today. This was such a fun call and great to catch up as always. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, this was so fun. Thank you so much for having me, Emily.